This is a new style segmented blank that I started making in the shop, and recently I made a very large batch of these. I like the way they look as blanks, but I thought it might be fun today to turn one for you and show you how they look in a pin kit. You know that I like to always mark all four corners. We've talked about this in past videos, but the thickness of the lead means that it doesn't go exact center of the blank. This edge is exact center. The pencil is a little bit off, so you can see I have four lines on there, but you can see where they all cross in the middle. That gives us a very nice center mark that we can put a little dimple in, and now we know dead center of our blank. My plan is to make this to a Sierra pin kit, so I've chucked up a 27/64" drill bit, and we're going to go ahead and put a hole right down the center of our blank. You want to take your time when drilling segmented blanks because you're going to have different hardnesses of material in the blank, and you'll feel that as I got through the maple, I hit the SpectraPly, and the SpectraPly is extremely soft, so the bit just dug in and really wanted to pull through that material. You want to try to hold it at a nice steady pace because you don't want to let it just hog down through there. It'll chew the material up, and then as you turn it away, you'll have chunks missing around your tube, potentially chunks missing around your tube. I wanted to show you guys something real quick before we glue the tube into this blank. There's my entry hole, and it's pretty well centered on the blank. Looks amazing. You pop to the exit hole, take a look at that. It looks like we're off to one side. That is most likely due to the fact that these blanks were square when I put them together, but then I ran them on the sander to clean them up, and I probably sanded, pushing into the sander, I probably pushed in one side harder than the other. So the blank is not perfectly square when it's finished. And that's partially my fault. I need to find a better way to handle that. But if you take a look at this line down the blank, what I did is I drew a line right next to the entry hole, and I transferred it to the side of the blank all the way down the blank. And when you get to the bottom of the blank, you can see we're barely overlapping that line with the hole at the bottom. So yes, we are a tiny bit off, most likely, as I said, due to the blank not being perfectly square, but that's not enough where it's going to cause a problem. That's something to always take into mind, and it's something that I need to focus on more when I make my blanks, is after they're done, how to get them back into square so that things like this don't happen. We're ready to glue the tube into the blank. I've got a hunk of Play-Doh here. You can see I've already scuffed my tube really well. I'm gonna go ahead and put a little Play-Doh in each end of the tube. I used to only put it in one end, but what I found is I'll lay the tube down, and when I pick it back up, I'll pick it up and put the end without the Play-Doh into the blank. Play-Doh is super cheap, so by doing both ends or putting Play-Doh in both ends of the tube, I don't have to worry about grabbing the wrong end. I've already got my resin and my hardener on some tape here. I like to use tape on my bench because as soon as I'm done, I can peel the tape up, wad it into a ball, throw it away, and I don't have any issue at all with cleanup. Mix it up really good, and we're going to just basically make sure we get decent coverage all over our tube. I'll try to take it probably about 3/4 of the way up, and then a lot of the epoxy will squeeze out, and we can use that to finish the tube off. Pop it into the entry hole here. I'm going to kind of twist it, pull it back and forth. That way I smear epoxy all over the inside of my blank. Now you can see we got a nice little glob here. We'll just pick that up and use it to coat the remainder of the tube. There we are. I'm going to use my tube insertion tool. All right, I want to make sure, see there's a big gap on the other end, so I want to make sure I push this in and try to center it as best as possible. Okay, in my mind, I see the end of the tube and it looks like it's about here, and the other end of the tube looks like it's about here, so I'm pretty close to center, I feel like. The Play-Doh did get kind of pushed back in because I didn't catch the end of my brass tube, but I'm hoping there wasn't a whole lot on the end of my insertion tool, so I hope I didn't get a lot into the brass tube. We'll find out whenever we get the end of this cut off and are able to square it up, and if there is any epoxy in that tube at all, we'll clean it out with a file. This is ready to just set and dry, so I'm gonna find a nice piece of cardboard in the shop to put it on. We'll let it dry overnight, and then we'll set up to turn. What I'm doing now is not a mandatory step in the manufacture of your blank, but I was curious, how well did I do centering the tube inside of my blank? So I took my calipers and I measured the depth of the tube at both ends of the blank. I made a little mark on the outside of the blank, and I used a small T-square to scribe that mark. And I can see that my tube is between these two marks, and I'm a little bit off center. Now, that's not going to be an issue, and I'll tell you why. This is a Sierra kit that I'll be using, and there's a tiny bit of play with the blanks in a Sierra kit. So what we're going to do is we'll cut this excess material off. Over on the sanding jig, we'll square each end of this blank, and I'm going to go ahead and sand this one back to where it touches the first triangle. What that will do is give me a perfectly centered blank that is maybe a little over an 1/8 inch shorter than a normal Sierra style pin, but you will never notice it, and it will fit just fine, and the blank will be much more pleasing to the eye if it's symmetrical. You'll notice I cut just to the outside of each of my lines, and that's because I didn't want to get into the tube any more than I had to, since I planned to shorten it on this end. Now I'm going to take it over to the sanding jig, and I'm going to square both ends of the blank. I'm going to start by pressing the Play-Doh plugs out of the blank. They generally come out fairly easy, especially if you give the blank a little over a day to dry. They're still a little pliable after 24 hours, but if you wait 48 hours, these will be hard as a rock, and a lot of times it'll shrink and they'll fall right out of the blank. The blank goes onto the jig just fine from this end, but I noticed from this end, there's a little resistance. If you remember, whenever we glued this up, the Play-Doh plug moved a little bit as I was pushing the tube into the blank, and I can see that there's a little bit of epoxy in the blank. So I'm going to use a chainsaw file, and I like chainsaw files because while they are pointy at one end, they seem to be the same diameter all the way down the blank, so I don't have to worry about putting a chamfer on my my tube. I can just sand by putting even pressure into the tube, and I can get rid of that epoxy, and it looks like it's only in one spot. We want to be careful too. I don't want to sand too much away, because if I do, then my components won't fit snugly in my brass tube. So watch what you're doing and be very careful. Looks like I got most of it. There's a tiny bit left. There we go. That looks pretty good. All right, let's see how she fits on the jig. Like a champ. Blank looks really nice. You can see the brass just starting to show on both ends. This end got a little hot. This was the end that I had to take some material away from, and maple will always kind of burn a little bit, but you'll never see that. Most of it will get turned away, and the component will hide any of it that's not. But you can see by looking at the blank, I have a nice symmetrical looking blank. That's going to look great on our kit. I'm going to be using these multi-purpose bushings, and these are my favorites because they have a 1/4 inch hole down the center so you can use them on your mandrel, or they have a 60-degree cone cut into the opposite end so you can turn between centers, and that's my preference. These are nice because however you want to turn, you have that option. One coat of thin CA to act as a sanding sealer. On this particular blank, I'm going to start sanding with 200 grit because I had such a nice finish with the skew. So really we just want to clean it up. I'll come back and show you what it looks like when I'm finished sanding. Please excuse the excess noise in the shop. I have an air conditioner running because it's extremely hot here today. I'm wiping back and forth on the blank to clean anything that might be in the grain of the blank. Now we're going to power it on and wipe with the blank as it's spinning. You can see there's a lot of dust coming off. That's good. The more of that we get off the blank, the better. Now I'm just going to let it sit here and dry for a few minutes, and we'll be ready to apply CA. You'll notice that I have gone ahead and transferred it from the turning bushings to the non-stick bushings. Got a really nice finish with my CA. Blank looks amazing. I'm going to get it off of the non-stick bushings. We're going to go ahead and re-square the ends, get it back on the turning bushings, and then we'll polish it up with our micro mesh. I just finished micro meshing and I could not be happier with how this blank looks. It looks absolutely amazing, and I have not even buffed it yet. Let's go ahead and get some Renaissance wax on here and buff this blank up. I'm ready to press this pin into a kit, and I just want to decide. I think what I'm going to do, I think I'll put the clip, let's put this in here. I think I'll put the clip down the back like this, so that way I see as much of the bands as possible, because I really like the way those bands look. Get this into my press here. Try to keep it as straight as possible as we There we go. Oh, shoot. I let it rotate a little bit. Well, a little disappointed about that. I just didn't hold it steady, and you can see I didn't hit the gray going down the back. I have the opportunity to knock it apart and redo it. I don't think I'm going to do that, though. Not at this point. That just turned out really nice. Beautiful kit, too. I laid the pin down because I wanted to wipe it off after I got done pressing it to get some of the fingerprints off of it. But that is just a beautiful blank. I love the gray and that maroon together. It's gorgeous. This is a Monarch pin kit. Very nice pin kit. I got this from Nels and Debbie over at the Classic Nib, and I just love this kit. One of my favorites. I'd like to thank you for joining me in the shop today. I had a great time turning this segmented blank for you. This is a really cool pattern. I love it, especially with the SpectraPly. This also looks nice with just contrasting woods, like a maple and walnut done this way really looks good. And also you could take contrasting woods and put like maple and put walnut, and maybe a Paduke in the middle or something like that to kind of spice it up and just make it look different. So it's a great little segmented blank to make. And if you're interested in a pattern for making that, check out my Etsy store. I'm going to put a link to the Etsy store in the description so you can jump right over to the Etsy store. I have a number of patterns over there, and I'm going to continue to add patterns all the time. If you have any questions or want to see a special pattern, let me know about it. Thanks for hanging out with me today in the shop. I want you to know that you are always welcome in my shop. Come back and see me again real soon, and have a great evening.